Howdy everyone, welcome to Hex Hunter. I'm Mokog, and today we are taking a video request from one of our subscribers. I got a request from Zygon, who put himself out there and made a post out on the Reddit, and he made I'd say a provocative statement out there. And his claim was that Magic the Gathering and Hex really shared a lot of similar design elements, and really Hex has designed itself into a box. And he linked it to a Reddit discussion that he started up about that, and I thought, alright, well, you know, I want to be as open and, honest as possible, and by golly, I should be able to be open to all points of view, so I just jumped on over to that Reddit post, and I took a look at it, and, well, I did have a few thoughts on it. Now, Zygon is one of our subscribers, and he's a fantastic guy, and so I wanted to really look for the nuggets of what was in that post, and I came out with a couple good pieces. For one thing, he is putting forth the argument that the design differences between Magic and Hex at this current point in time seem to be very similar to each other, and that being a digital game doesn't seem like it can currently do everything that a physical game does. And he cites a couple examples, and I do have to agree with some of the people on the Reddit that some of those examples are flawed, but it illuminated me to the idea of, there are differences between an analog game and a digital game, and maybe we should take a look at those. And so I thought, let's take a look at the advantages and disadvantages of both, and then talk a little bit about Hex's digital setup. So, let's go ahead and start off with the advantages of an analog physical play. The biggest advantage of physical play is direct human interaction. We all interact with each other, we do it on a daily basis, and in a game, direct human interaction is the most vital element. It's also one of the biggest things that digital games want to emulate, especially now, because as we get more connected, it takes us closer to original human interaction. So that is a really big plus. The other thing about physical games is that you get a feeling of ownership of all of your cards, all of your materials, but also ownership of your experience. Every game you play, you are there, and that's really crucial in things like tournaments, where really being on site, being surrounded by the people, meeting everyone, having human interaction with what you own and your ideas is really powerful. One of the other advantages, especially if you take a look at HexTCG forums, fake RNG. We may not all consciously do it, but I know I've consciously done it a few times. When you shuffle, it's not true RNG. So you can make sure that you shuffle in a way that makes a favorable distribution of your cards. It makes you feel as though you're getting a more consistent play experience. But there are also disadvantages to physical TCGs. One of the biggest ones is actually the limits of human patience for design elements. If a person gets frustrated with the use of keywords or mechanics, if a person looks and reads at a card and sees a giant block of text and doesn't want to execute the mechanic, will they even play the card? Will they value the card? Will they want the card? Plus also, complex interactions burden the play experience in an analog game. You can come up with many types of transforming cards, flipping cards, taking different types of tokens, including them in sets, but what you end up creating in an average play experience, and especially in a competitive play experience, is time-consuming rigor that is not really fun to do. It makes a point, it shows that, this idea was awesome, but if you have to physically execute that idea, this gleam and sheen of the idea gets ripped away. Plus also, there's also easy misinterpretation of complex interactions. Having the stack explained to you from Magic the Gathering for the first time, especially by someone who's only mildly familiar with it, is a tongue-twisted nightmare. And especially when it comes to misinterpretation of how games should play. My very first Magic the Gathering experience happened when I was in high school. Someone brought a couple decks that they had up, and they were teaching me how to play Magic the Gathering. And imagine the air quotes there, because what they taught me was not how Magic the Gathering played. They planned an all lands drop style. So if you drew your initial hand of 7 cards and you had 5 land in it, you played down all 5 land and you were essentially top decking the whole game. And that just destroys the balance of Magic the Gathering. If I ever took my ideas about a deck, and if I bought into cards at that time and tried to go do that at a tournament, I'd have been a laughingstock, because I was playing homebrewed tabletop Magic. You had so many different ways to play some of the original Magic that it wasn't until tournaments were coming around and you had that really consistent play style that it really formalized out to kitchen tables everywhere. And still today, it's there were times when you played Magic like kids play Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't matter necessarily if you follow the rules if it was cool. But if you wanted to be competitive and you wanted to be part of the community, you had to know the rules. And you had to go above and beyond to get to those sometimes. And that's a big limitation because a lot of that is word of mouth until you get into the community. One of the other disadvantages is that sometimes those collections get burdensome. And not even just Magic. I mean, I have a selection of Magic cards, maybe 300 or 400 Magic cards. And that's not a lot, especially for people who know the vastness of their own collections. But if I took a look at how much Pokemon cards I have, Magi Nation cards, Dragon Ball Z, World of Warcraft cards, I have thousands of cards. I have boxes of cards. And managing those, getting them in a usable state, especially for complex deck brews, is a burden. I mean, sometimes it's fun if I have hours to kill, or I could use a sort feature on a digital game. Well, since we brought up digital, let's go ahead and take a look at the disadvantages of digital first. The biggest thing digital does is it puts a layer between humans and their interaction. It obfuscates our interaction, for good and for bad. But the bad side of it is you don't have the visual cues from a person. You don't see how they're breathing. You don't see how they handle their hands. You don't see the smile. You don't see the frowns. I mean, the frowns are just as good. Pulling a person away from eye-to-eye contact is detrimental to a play experience. One of the things a digital game has to do to be popular and fantastic is allow some form of viable communication between players. It also experiences limited portability. You could take your Magic the Gathering cards anywhere. You could take your Pokemon cards anywhere. It was, you just put them into your pocket. That's harder to do with Hex right now. It's going to get easier when it gets its mobile app, when it's on tablets. When it gets to that point, you can take it anywhere, pull it out, and play anywhere. But one of the big things that's good for portability of physical cards is you're taking physical cards to go interact with a physical human versus just a convenience play for being able to play your digital game anywhere. One of the other big detriments to digital property is its volatile value. The proposition is that, we want these digital collectibles. Digital collectibles are cool. You can go sell yourself a Spectral Tiger for a couple $100 still. But one of the other losses that occur in digital games is a loss of tactile elements. There is something really good about the feeling of a card in your hand. You can't get away from that, but that's part tied to the ownership. The other thing that's also a disadvantage of digital games, real random number generation. Well, more real random number generation. There's no truly random number in a digital environment because it's extremely onerous to create truly random numbers. But it's a lot more random than the types of shuffling that are presently used in most tournament environments. But the big nitty-gritty is that there's an awful lot of advantages to digital development. So the biggest one is that you have all of the same analog elements that are possible available to you in a digital element. So you can have flipping of cards, you can have the turning of cards, you can have the bringing in of tokens, you can actually represent counters. Anything that can be done physically, you can replicate in a digital realm. But the biggest thing that occurs is you're replicating those elements without the onerous application of the rules to those elements to be performed by the players. It is handled by the computer. It's handled by the program. If your card is supposed to add a +1/+1 counter, your card gets a +1/+1 counter. If your card is supposed to transform from the aspirant, it transforms into the transcendent. It happens immediately, instantly. You don't have to dig around in a pile. You don't have to reach out from your tournament play zone. It is there instantaneously. I like to compare it like this. There's nothing like how good tapping feels, and tapping will always feel better than clicking. But transforming a card feels better than laying a card on top of another. And those complex elements executing correctly every time is so amazing for a digital game. There are no more judge calls. The card works the way the card works. If it's not supposed to work the way you think it works, you can go yell on the forums, but as far as the game you're playing is concerned, it works the way it's supposed to. And plus, I didn't mention this before, but one of the big disadvantages of physical games is people love to cheat. They just do. I mean, by God, a lot of those kitchen table deck brews that, I'm not talking like Commander, I'm not talking, really good upstanding people. I'm talking about the 15-year-old who's got a couple rares to his name and has played only 2 months longer than you have and has decided that he knows more than you about how the stack works, and he talks a really good game and you happen to be like 11. Yeah, that kind of cheating doesn't happen in Hex. The rules are the rules. Your opponent can't talk you out of winning. If you actually wanted to cheat in a digital game, you have to go above and beyond to cheat. If you wanted to cheat when someone wasn't streaming, you'd have to find the code, get the code to work and interact with the HexTCG servers, have to fight with their protection systems that they have in place to deal with crazy nonsense. For day-to-day average players, that's not really viable. And so you're going to have a lot fewer instances of this actually ever occurring, even if it could occur. So what this brings me to is that there's a lot of advantages and a lot of disadvantages on both sides. But what I find in the digital space, especially related to design, is the digital space has everything that you can do in analog, but it is done easier. Analog has everything that you can bring to bear in the human mind, but it is complex and difficult to explain and relies hugely on human interaction and human honesty in a competitive environment that is onerous, time-consuming, and inconsistent. Digital solves the onerousness of the time commitment to execute complex, engaging mechanics and makes those which would not be engaging in a physical play more engaging, attractive even, and powerful in a digital game. Magic the Gathering can do and has attempted to do every conceivable mechanic that I've ever seen. They have dual cards. They have cards with typefaces on both sides. They have various different types of tokens. They have evolved their system over the last 20 years to do many incredible things. The design put in by all of the teams that have worked on Magic the Gathering is incredible. What Hex is doing is they have said all of those things that you found onerous and hard to do, we're not just going to do them, we're going to do them better. We're going to make people love them, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. I get that every time I go back and read the documents that Hex put out. And that's one of the reasons why they picked a lot of really difficult to execute mechanics for physical TCGs in their first set. Permanent effects on cards is hard to do in analog TCG. Transforming cards is hard to do. Creating cards and having them interact with the zones of play is hard to do. It's easy to put a token into play. It's different putting it into the deck. It's different putting it into the graveyard. Permanent effects going between zones is different between them. And it's just the start. They pick the hard stuff to be defining mechanics. We'll see the easy stuff later. We might see equipment later. The World of Warcraft TCG had equipment. Hex could have equipment. We have champions. We know there's going to be equipment in PvE. We know there's going to be leveling in PvE. We're going to have level of champions in PvE. For PvP, they chose something a little different. We're going to see how they play out. We're going to be critical of how they play out because they're playing in the digital realm now. We've had a couple decades to decide how we like our video games. We've had a couple decades to decide how we like our TCGs, how Hex integrates those two ideas together, how they execute those ideas is going to be where they win or lose. I think they're going to win, but I'm biased. I want to thank y'all for listening. I want to thank Zygon for submitting this topic. Without him, this video wouldn't be done, and I think it was a good idea to bring up because you know what? There's good on both sides, there's bad on both sides, but no matter how much I hate the random number generator, I love it when it gives me an alternate art Wrathwood Colossus. I'm just saying. I'm Mokog, and this is Hex Center.